Street Media. And since we're not together with my team for Beer 30, I thought maybe you and I could celebrate Beer 30 together. So
I'd love to do that. Little happy hour, little crack of the beer. Hopefully it doesn't explode on my computer.
I got a
Couple
little on the
sparks.
monitor, but it's all right.
Me too. And for the audience, I'm actually drinking a Vermont beer, the Conehead Indian Pale Ale from Vermont that Ted personally sent me when my daughter Avery was born 2 years ago. So that's a good thing and such a really sad thing that this has been in the fridge for 2 years. And the other one that you sent me is being used for beer bread because we're getting low on rations. And so we're cooking beer bread today.
Good. Well, I got Green State, which is one of my go-tos.
That's the other one.
Yeah. All right. Good. All right. Well, I'm glad that the beer is finally getting used.
Very good. Well, thanks, Ted. I'm really happy to be here chatting with you guys. And in these uncertain times, it's really a refreshing time to sit back and be with friends in the industry. You and I have known each other for 10 years, and it's been children. Yeah, it's before we had children, that's for sure. Speaking of that, how are you adjusting with the children and working from home and everything?
Well, so Vermont threw us a little bit of a curveball last night when they announced that the school is out for the entire school year. So we've got a tradition where at the end of the school year, we do a little air guitar to some Alice Cooper. So we air guitared the schools out for summer this morning, which I never expected I would do in March. And thank God my mother-in-law, who I tell everyone I won the mother-in-law lotto, my mother-in-law is a retired school teacher. So my son is spending a lot of time with her over the next couple of months.
Good for you. Yeah, it was a lucky lotto that you won there. Yes, yeah, especially this time. I'm lucky, I have a 3-year-old and 2-year-old, and I think yours are right there too, right around the same age. And every time I walk out of my office, it's, Daddy, are you done for the day? Daddy, are you done for the day? And small adjustments we got to make day to day.
No, I've been hanging out up here in the attic. I think I've spent more time in this attic in the last probably 2 weeks than in the entire time I've owned the house.
Funny. Okay.
So, well, one thing I'm sort of curious about, because one of the things that I love talking about with you is you get so much, there's so much information that comes into you, right, from all sources across the industry. So kind of one of the things that I wanted to know is what are you hearing? What are you hearing from, different companies, from people within the industry, what's going on out there, and what are you seeing?
Yeah. So I'll give you, we run a program called T3 Fellows. Dean and Jack on our team engages with the T3 Fellows very frequently. So we did a little survey of some of the activity that they're seeing last week. I see dealing with the brokerage side of the technology industry, where when I go into a brokerage, I analyze what they're doing. And so they, of course, dish to me what they're dealing with too. And I got 3 kind of litmus points or tests, barometers for you. One is transactions. Well, obviously transactions are a huge lagging indicator. We're down about 10% in transactions in the last couple of weeks. And really this was pretty recent data. And so, all those buyers, all those sellers wanting to just get that last push before people settled in and hunkered down, basically.
Yep.
So that's still kind of maintained, a lot of closings and stuff like that. And there have been a lot of last minute, let's get my listing on the market before the market might shut down, right? That's the hysteria that people are facing. So that's one. The second one then is lead traffic, listing traffic, and just kind of campaigns. So I obviously get to deal with a lot of companies such as yourself, and we're seeing somewhere around 20 to 30% dip in new listings hitting the market and stuff like that. So that's another lagging indicator, because a lot of these things are, once you take a listing, you've already committed to a lot of the marketing. And so we're starting to see that dip from other companies that are in your space, and also just directly from the brokerage. The biggest surprise, though, is probably the third barometer, and that is the website traffic. Well, it's up and down, and in certain markets that are really kind of shut down, and we just shut down a couple of days ago in Colorado for stay-at-home mandate. But in some markets, it's actually not seeing a hit, and it's actually increasing. I have traffic reports from one of the largest major franchises in our country, and believe it or not, they've almost neared record highs in this time period. So just as recent as yesterday. So I have day-by-day traffic, and it's just continuing to go up. So the moral of the story, I think, here is engagement. Engagement is so darn important because consumers are still engaging. They're just doing it in a different way.
Well, and it's interesting because I mean, I wrote a post last week about, and I can mention it because the client authorized me to share it on our blog, but about Adam Dow, who's like a longtime client of ours. And so he's in the Lakes region of New Hampshire. So last Tuesday, he actually saw the highest traffic he's seen on his website this entire year, with the exception of one day that beat it by 2 users. And those 2 days were the highest traffic since the middle of last summer when he was running a very specific campaign during the peak of his season, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he analyzed where are those people coming from? And a lot of it is like, from the Boston area and other points like more urban areas like throughout the Northeast. And sort of my theory is like, there's never been a better time to move to the Lakes region, right? Because first of all, like I feel like this is an event that's kind of like a 9/11, like a Pearl Harbor, right? It's going to change the way that we think and how we work forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like all of a sudden everybody just went remote and then like 3 months from now, we're all just going to go back to the office, right? I would not want to be sitting on large pieces of commercial real estate right now, right? So I think that people are going to change how they work and how they think. And as a result, like, you could go live in the Lakes region of New Hampshire and still work for your company in Boston in a way that you probably would have been harder to make that argument like before this.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing too is I think that there's certain markets where like there's this weird, I mean, if you think of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's like food, safety, shelter, right? Well, you all saw what happened with food at the beginning of this. Like there was the grocery stores got to run, right?
Yeah.
Great time to be in the grocery industry or maybe in the toilet paper industry. And then after that, like now there's this weird mix of like shelter and safety that have kind of come together, right? Where normally people don't think about like, sort of safety in the same context of like, am I more than 6 feet away from my neighbor, right? And so I think that there's been a big move, at least in the markets where we work, towards like, more urban, more downtown living. And I think that this is going to shift that back a little bit, possibly towards, more suburban or rural like setups, because it's like, oh, the next time something like this comes, do I really want to be stuck in like, 700 square feet in the middle of like, a super dense urban area, or do I want to be in a place where I've got a little bit more where I can stretch my legs out a little? Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of, one theory that I've got. And it was really interesting because to your point, like he had his best traffic day, in a long time. And so I think, look, everyone's sitting at home, right? And they're spending a lot of time looking at the internet right now.
Yeah. And as people are virtualizing their businesses and, adjusting for the face-to-face, what does it come back down to? And that's engagement, but, bringing it back down to our businesses now, how does this impact what you guys are doing and what we're doing? And you saw yesterday, we just announced the Tech 500. And so we've been tracking tech companies, 555 over 63 categories. You guys are recognized in several categories in there. But one of the things we're also tracking behind the scenes is which of those categories are people looking at and engaging with right now in this time of need. So it used to be, oh, I need to have CRM and some other common strategies. Now it's like, I need video email, I need digital marketing, I need live chat, I need streaming advertising, like that kind of stuff. So we're seeing trends shift instantly overnight. Totally. And so like for you guys, I guess my question to you is, obviously I know you do omni-channel digital marketing. You're in numerous categories inside the Tech 500 report. And so what are you seeing from a micro trend of what your clients are doing and also what's happening macro with like Google and Facebook and stuff like that?
Yeah. So like a couple of things that we've looked. So we've been looking at like week over week data of, with across our platform from this year, like, this month of March versus last month of March. Right. And so two things that kind of jump out for us. The first is we're definitely seeing an increase in traffic coming from social media, right? Because I think people are spending a lot of time on social media, like in this period of like, social distancing, like we're coming together, like, we're being more like digitally connected, right? So that's a place people are going to for information, and they're leaving that to go look at real estate. The second thing that we're seeing that I think is really interesting is people are backing off on their Google spends. And those that are holding the spend steady are actually seeing like a lot more traffic. We're seeing an increase across our platform to sites from the paid campaigns that we're running. And my belief is that because, it's an auction-like model, right? So people are backing down their spends. Those that are holding steady are getting more like eyeballs for the same dollars. And we're actually seeing an increase. I think we were up like 11%, and then I think it was like 17% one week versus the next week during as this has gotten worse. Now we'll see the last week, like on Monday, but that to me is fascinating, right? You don't see like movement, like that kind of movement over a week period, like under normal circumstances, right? I mean, that's a huge shift.
Just kind of to recap there, spends are down, but demand is way up, or I shouldn't say demand, but the inventory is way up.
Exactly.
And so ultimately we're getting lower cost per clicks and all that stuff. So those that are holding the line and sticking through this and keeping their digital advertising spends, I can't say much for print in this time period, but digital advertising spends are going to benefit and engage more people for less money.
Yeah. And, there's a really interesting Rand Fishkin post that I saw. I'm old enough to remember a landline telephone. And so we actually went out and called all of our clients, which I literally pulled whole teams off to call clients in the last couple of weeks. But during the course of those calls, was sort of exposed to this post, and it's a brilliant post. And he basically talks about coming into a recession is kind of like, a driver, like a racer, coming into a turn, right? So the first thing you want to do is shed excess cost, right? And we're actually having conversations with our clients who are actively downgrading at times. And we're saying, hey, that makes sense, right? There are areas that you might want to shed, but let's not shed all of it. Let's do it tactfully, because what you then, as you shed the cost, you come into that corner and then you figure out what's the new business model? What's the new opportunity, right? And then you start to accelerate into that turn, right? And then you pass the competitors on the straightaway. You've thought up of the new model, you start to invest and spend before them, right? So that by the time you come around the bend, you are well ahead, and you've got the they're way behind you. And I think the other thing too that sort of speaks to that, that's kind of particularly interesting, is I think one of my coworkers is coming up the stairs here. So one of the things that is really interesting to me, in that scenario, right, is to try to figure out what is the week before the peak, right? When do things kind of when is everyone at their sort of deepest and darkest place before kind of we come into this next period where there's going to be a lot of opportunity, and trying to identify that market timing is a very important part of the conversation. No, hold on. This is one of my coworkers. Hey, I'm on a video call.
I think there's child labor laws about this. I'm not positive. Maybe not in Vermont.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
I'll drink to that.
Yeah, mom's calling for me apparently. Well, so I guess to just sort of wrap it, I'm just curious, any kind of thoughts or things that you think that you've been sharing with people over the last last week.
Yeah, I think that the missing point in all of this is still a market, and there's still demand and need for consumers to be purchasing homes. And while they might put it on pause, this is a rubber band that's stretching. And once it lets go, we're not going to rebound to 100%, obviously, because the year is long. But there's going to be, if we drop 30% here, well, we're going to gain some of that back. And we might be down 10, 15, 20% over the year. But it's when that rebound effect happens, when companies such as yourselves can help a firm that's been engaging in these tough times weather that storm and gain some of that market share back. So that's kind of the moral of the story is, my biggest thing is engagement. Staying where the eyeballs and the discussion is, but ultimately being there. You're probably not going to sign a ton of contracts or write a bunch of listings or whatever it is, but you will be able to engage and be there when they're ready to rebound. And that's probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, during this period of social isolation, as I said, we got to be digitally present. And I think that what we're going to see is that people who are you know, like engaging now during the COVID winter will like take the benefit of the COVID spring market that I think is going to be probably one of the strongest spring markets we've ever seen. Because on the other side of this, the systemically, like I think we're in a good place. I think like on the macro, we're in a good place. We came into this at a good place. And so I believe like, and of course I'm an optimist, but I believe when we get on the other side, this is going to be some good stuff.
I am too. Well, we'll see you on the other side, Ted.
Hey, absolutely, man.
Cheers.
Great to have a beer with
Yes.
you. Cheers.
Take care.